The galaxy had been burning for 3 years. The Karis Empire, proud and ancient, was locked in a bloody conflict with the newly arrived humans. No one in the Karis High Council had expected humans to fight so fiercely. They were newcomers to the galactic stage. But every report said the same thing. Humans refused to surrender, even when outnumbered. Princess Lyra of House Velarin had never seen the war up close. She was the youngest daughter of the Emperor, raised in the Crystal, towers of Valyrian Prime, where the air was always warm and the skies were always calm. But she was no fool. She studied military history, learned political tactics, and understood that the Empire's future was balanced on a knife's edge. When the Council asked her to attend a diplomatic inspection at the front lines, she agreed. She believed that seeing the war with her own eyes would make her a better leader. Her royal escort ship, the Starvale, slipped through hyperspace toward the contested border. The crew was tense, weapons on standby. Lyra stood near the viewport, watching the stars stream past. She felt uneasy. Her instincts whispered that something would go wrong. The attack came faster than she expected. Without warning, the blackness of space erupted with bright flashes. 4 enemy ships uncloaked around them. They weren't human ships. Their hulls were jagged, their weapons old but deadly. Pirates, or worse. The Starvale's captain barked orders, shields flaring under the first volley, but the enemy was too close, too fast. Energy beams tore through the outer decks. Lyra's guards rushed her toward the escape pods. Before she could enter, the ship shuddered violently. The blast threw her off her feet. She hit the floor hard, ears ringing. Smoke filled the corridor. Through the haze, she saw one of her guards cut down by enemy fire. Then, a figure appeared in the chaos. He wasn't Karis. His build was broad, his face human. He wore battered combat armor marked with strange unit symbols. A long rifle was slung over his shoulder, but in his hands was a sleek alien sidearm, probably taken from a fallen enemy. "Princess?" His voice cut through the noise. "On your feet! We're leaving now!" Lyra stared at him, confused. "Who are you?" "Commander Daniel Hayes, Terran Defense Force. Your people sent a distress beacon. I answered." She had no time to question further. He grabbed her arm, not roughly, but firmly, and pulled her toward a side hatch. The corridor they entered was worse. Enemy boarders were inside, ugly and insect-like. Daniel moved like a predator. He fired short, precise bursts, each shot dropping an enemy. His movements were economical, no wasted effort, no hesitation. Lyra followed, shocked at his speed. Karis soldiers fought with honor, making wide, dramatic swings with their energy blades. Daniel fought like he wanted the fight over before it began. They reached a small docking tube where a single scarred shuttle waited. Daniel shoved her inside and sealed the hatch. Seconds later, the shuttle broke free of the dying Starvale. Through the viewport, Lyra watched her ship drift, venting fire and debris. Then it exploded in a silent bloom of light. She felt a cold weight in her chest. Those were her people. Her guards, her crew. "I'm sorry," Daniel said quietly, reading the look on her face. "But you're alive. That's what matters." Lyra turned to him, her voice steady but sharp. "You came for me? Why?" He hesitated. "I was nearby, and I don't like bullies." That answer didn't satisfy her, but she said nothing. Hours. Later, they landed on a hidden human outpost deep in an asteroid belt. Lyra had never been inside a human base before. It was functional, not beautiful. Walls of raw metal, floors scuffed from heavy boots, air filled with the faint smell of machine oil. The humans saluted Daniel but eyed Lyra with open curiosity. She stood tall, ignoring their stares. Daniel led her to a small command room. "You can send a message to your people from here, but I'd recommend waiting until the area's secure. Whoever hit your ship might still be looking for you." She studied him as he spoke. His voice was calm, but there was something in his eyes, a strange focus, as if he was constantly scanning for threats. He moved with quiet confidence, like a warrior who'd seen too many battles but refused to break. And then there was something else. Lyra didn't know why, but being near him made her aware. Every sound, every flicker of light seemed sharper. Her heartbeat quickened when he stepped. Close. She told herself it was adrenaline from the rescue, but deep inside, she wasn't sure. Later, while the outpost settled into its routine, Lyra walked alone along the metal corridors. She found Daniel in the armory checking his weapons. "You fight differently," she said. He glanced up. "Differently from who?" "From my people. You don't waste motion. You strike like you know the exact second your enemy will fall." A small smile touched his lips. "Where I come from, fights are short. You win fast or you don't win at all." For a moment, they just looked at each other. Lyra felt the strange pull again, an invisible thread between them. "Thank you," she said finally. "For saving me," he shrugged. "I couldn't leave you there." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You say that like it's personal." Daniel paused, his gaze holding hers. "Maybe it is." That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. In her quarters, she remembered old lessons from her tutors, whispered legends of the bonded, rare pairs whose lives were connected by a force beyond logic, sometimes even across species. Such bonds were said to make warriors unstoppable, their instincts and senses linked. It was a myth, of course. The Karis were too rational to believe in fate. And yet, when Daniel had pulled her through the burning corridors of the Star Vale, she'd moved without thinking, matching his pace exactly. When he'd raised his weapon, she'd known where he would fire before he did. She shook her head. Impossible. Still, when she closed her eyes, she saw his face, focused, fierce, and strangely familiar, as if she had known him long before they'd met. The next morning, Daniel came to her quarters. "We've got word from your people," he said. "They're sending a retrieval ship. It'll be here in 2 days." Lyra nodded, but her mind was troubled. 2 days was plenty of time for the enemy to find them again, and deep inside, she felt something else, something she couldn't explain. A quiet fear, not of danger, but of leaving Daniel behind. By the time she saw him in the mess hall speaking with his crew, the truth had already begun to take root in her mind. She didn't understand it yet, but she could feel it. Something tied her to the human warrior, something the galaxy would never expect. 2 days felt longer than a month. Princess Lyra remained at the human outpost, waiting for the Karis retrieval ship. She tried to fill her time with routine, studying the human base layout, speaking with their officers, and reviewing the latest war updates. But no matter what she did, her attention always drifted back to Daniel Hayes. He was never idle. One moment he was inspecting weapons, the next he was running combat drills with his soldiers. Even when he wasn't speaking, there was an energy about him, like he was always ready to fight. And every time he walked into a room, her body reacted before her mind could. Her heart beat faster, her senses sharpened, and a strange warmth settled in her chest. A political problem by the second morning, Lyra's communicator finally lit up with an incoming transmission from Valerian Prime. The Emperor, her father, appeared on the holoscreen, his stern face lined with worry. "Lyra, you are unharmed?" he asked. "Yes, father," she said. "The Star Vale was destroyed, but I was rescued by a human commander." The Emperor's expression hardened at the word human. "This is most unfortunate. The Council will not be pleased. The humans are our enemies, Lyra. You should have been recovered by Karis forces, not theirs." "They were the only ones who came," she replied, her tone even. From the side of the holoscreen, High Counselor Veyron spoke. "We will send a ship to retrieve you. Until then, You are to remain separate from this human warrior. It would be politically dangerous to be seen in his company. Lyra kept her face calm, but her mind bristled. They didn't know Daniel. They didn't understand what he'd done for her. I will obey, she said formally. But deep inside, she had no intention of keeping her distance. Unusual reactions. Later that day, Daniel asked her to join him on a short patrol through the asteroid tunnels surrounding the base. Thought you might want some air, he said. Lyra raised an eyebrow. We're in an asteroid belt. There's no air, he smirked. Figure of speech. Just means getting out of the base for a while. They boarded a small two-person scout craft. As soon as they launched into the tunnels, the danger became clear. There were places where the rock narrowed so much the ship barely fit, and sudden bursts of space debris forced Daniel to make sharp maneuvers. Lyra gripped the armrest at first, but soon she realized something strange. She could feel what Daniel was about to do. When he turned, she braced her body a split second before the motion. When a rock burst appeared, she leaned in the exact direction he swerved. It was as if her body already knew his next move. A shared danger. Halfway through the patrol, the scanners picked up an unknown signal. Daniel's eyes narrowed. That's not one of ours. He steered toward a shadowed cavern in the asteroid's surface. They powered down and waited. Moments later, a small raider craft drifted past, scanning the area. Lyra kept her voice to a whisper. If they find us, they won't, Daniel said firmly. Just stay close. The raider moved on. Daniel exhaled slowly, then turned to her. Their eyes met, and for a moment the rest of the galaxy didn't exist. Something passed between them in that silence. A steady, wordless understanding. An old memory. That night, Lyra returned to her quarters and opened the private database she had carried since childhood. She searched for the old stories about bonded mates. The ancient texts described rare pairs, two warriors whose souls were linked. Their instincts, senses, and even dreams would align. The bond could not be broken by distance or time. The stories were treated as myth, but her mother had once whispered that their bloodline still carried the gift. She thought about the patrol, the way she knew Daniel's movements without looking, the way her heart seemed to steady when he was near. She closed the database, unsettled, testing the theory. The next day, she found Daniel in the training hall. "Teach me your fighting style," she said. He studied her. "You've had Royal Guard training. Why learn mine?" "Because it's different, and because I want to see something." They began with unarmed combat. Daniel moved slowly at first, demonstrating basic strikes and blocks. Lyra copied him, but soon she noticed something. When he shifted weight to his left foot, she shifted at the same time. When he aimed a strike at her shoulder, she was already moving to counter before his arm reached her. Daniel stopped, his brow furrowing. "You're predicting me." She forced a neutral tone. "Maybe I'm just fast." He didn't look convinced. Sa'aret. Tension builds. That evening, she walked with him along the outer observation deck, where the stars shone sharp and cold beyond the glass. "Do you believe in fate?" she asked suddenly. Daniel gave a small laugh. "I believe in training and luck. Fate, not so much." And what if there was something that connected two people? Not by choice, but by nature. He looked at her for a long moment. "Is this about us?" She didn't answer. A political storm. The next morning, a new transmission came, not from her father, but from the Karis High Council directly. It was brief and sharp. "You will not remain in human custody any longer than necessary. Keep all contact to formal exchanges only. The presence of a human warrior in your personal space is unacceptable." She closed the message with a calm face, but her mind was boiling. Later, she found Daniel in the hangar. "They don't want me near you," she said. He shrugged. Doesn't surprise me. I'm the enemy. You're not my enemy. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. His eyes softened for just a second. Careful, Princess. That kind of talk could start trouble. Trouble, she said quietly, has already started. A warning in the shadows. That night, alarms blared through the base. An incoming vessel was approaching fast. Daniel and his team rushed to defensive positions. Lyra followed despite his order to stay in the safe zone. The ship wasn't Karis or human. It was the same type that had attacked the Starvale. Weapons hot, Daniel commanded. Lyra felt a spike of adrenaline. Her instincts screamed that this attack wasn't random. Whoever was behind it had a reason to target her specifically. Daniel glanced at her just before the first shot hit. Stay behind me. But she didn't need to be told. She was already moving exactly where he expected her to be before he even gave the order. The battle was short, but intense. Daniel's team disabled the enemy ship and drove it off. But as the adrenaline faded, Lyra realized something undeniable. Her movements, her reactions, even her breathing had matched Daniel's perfectly in the fight. It wasn't training. It wasn't luck. It was the bond. That night, as the base returned to quiet, she stood alone in the observation deck. She knew what. The bond meant in Kari's culture, rare, unbreakable, and deeply personal. It was something no one could force or fake. The morning after the attack, Princess Lyra decided she couldn't stay silent any longer. For days, she had been feeling the strange connection with Daniel. On the patrol, during training, in battle. Now she was certain it wasn't coincidence. She had grown up hearing the myths, and the signs were too clear. She had to know if he felt it too. The confrontation. She found him in the hangar, repairing the scout craft they had used earlier. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing old scars along his forearms. Daniel, she said, her voice steady. We need to talk. He glanced up. About what? About us. His hands stilled on the tool. What about us? I know this. Will sound strange to you, but my people have legends. Legends about two lives connected by something deeper than choice. We call them bonded mates. Daniel raised an eyebrow. And you think that's us? I don't think, she said, firmly. I know. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he set down the tool and leaned back against the hull. Lyra, I've been having dreams. For weeks before we met, I saw your face. Not clear, not detailed, but enough to know it was you. I didn't tell anyone because I thought it was just stress. Her breath caught. You saw me before you ever met me? Yeah, he said quietly. And since the rescue, I can tell where you are in a room without looking. I can feel when you're watching me. Lyra felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. That is the bond. It's real. Testing. The bond, they decided to test it. In the training hall, they stood facing each other. Daniel said, "Close your eyes. I'll move. You tell me what I'm doing." She shut her eyes. He stepped to the left. She said left. He raised his hand. She said hand up. He walked behind her. She said behind. When she opened her eyes, his expression was unreadable. That's not normal. No, she agreed. It's not. But she could see it in his eyes. Part of him was unsettled, yet another part seemed comforted. Rumors and reactions. The bond was supposed to be private, but word of their closeness began to spread. Some of Daniel's soldiers noticed how they moved in sync, how they never had to speak during tense moments. Whispered comments followed, them down the corridors. The Kare's High Council sent another message. Maintain distance from the human. Your duty is to the Empire, not to personal attachments. Lyra didn't reply. The enemy revealed. That afternoon, Daniel called her to the command room. We intercepted a data packet from the ship that attacked you. It wasn't a random raid. Someone paid them to hit the Starvale. Her eyes narrowed. Who? We don't know yet. But here's the thing. It wasn't human credits. And it wasn't Karis currency either. It came from an unknown account, routed through multiple systems. Lyra's mind raced. Then this war, someone is feeding it from the shadows. Exactly, Daniel said. And if I had to guess, whoever's behind it doesn't want our two species talking to each other. Dangerous ground. That night, as she walked the observation deck, Lyra thought about the possibility. If there was a hidden faction trying to keep humans and Karis apart, then her bond with Daniel was more than personal. It was dangerous. She imagined the Council's reaction if they knew. Some would call for her removal from succession. Others might even see her as a traitor, and the humans? They might not trust Daniel if they thought a bond with her could compromise his loyalty. But the truth was clear. The bond wasn't weakening them. It was making them stronger. A shared vision. Later, she couldn't sleep. She lay in her quarters, staring at the ceiling. And then it happened. In her mind, she saw Daniel, awake, walking down the dim corridors. She could feel his steps, the cool air, the weight of the pistol at his side. She sat up, startled. Moments later, a soft knock came at her door. She already knew it was him. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "No," she admitted. "And I saw you just now, in my head." He hesitated. "I saw you too, sitting here, looking worried." They stared at each other in the quiet, the reality sinking in. The bond wasn't just about instinct, it was growing. The interruption, before they could speak further, the base. Alarms blared. A small shuttle was approaching. Its transponder claimed it was Karis, but Daniel's scanners showed mismatched signals. "It's a fake," he said grimly. "They're trying to get in close." The base scrambled to alert. Daniel and Lyra rushed to the control deck. The approaching shuttle didn't respond to hails. "Bring the shields up," Daniel ordered. Seconds later, the shuttle's side panels slid open, revealing mounted cannons. They fired at the base, shaking the entire structure, fighting as one Daniel. Grabbed a rifle and handed Lyra a smaller sidearm. "Stay behind me." "I'll fight with you," she said sharply. They moved through the corridors toward the docking bay where the shuttle was forcing entry. Enemy soldiers in unfamiliar armor poured in, firing at anything in sight. Daniel and Lyra didn't need to shout orders. She knew when he would duck, when he would advance. He knew when she was about to fire. Their movements were a perfect rhythm, 2 steps ahead of the enemy. By the time the last attacker fell, the docking bay was littered with wreckage. The warning from one of the attacker's pockets, Daniel pulled a small black device. It was a hollow emitter. When he activated it, an alien figure appeared. Not human, not Karis. Its voice was low and cold. "End your contact with the human, or both your empires will burn." The image flickered out. A heavy choice back in the command. "Room." Daniel slammed the device onto the table. "That's our hidden faction. They're trying to scare us into breaking this off." "They don't understand," Lyra said quietly. "The bond doesn't break." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "But if staying close to me puts you in more danger—" "Daniel," she interrupted, her voice firm. "We're already in danger. The difference is that together, we can fight it." For the first time since meeting her, Daniel didn't argue. He just nodded. That night, Lyra stood by the viewport, watching the cold stars. The war was no longer just about humans and Karis. Something larger was moving in the shadows. The palace of Viralia was no longer filled with music and light. Whispers replaced laughter. Guards walked the halls with tense eyes and firm grips on their weapons. The great banners of peace hung heavy, as if they too sensed the change in the air. Princess Serenia stood on the highest balcony, looking toward the horizon where black clouds gathered over the hills. The storm was not natural. She could feel it in her bones. It was the same sense of unease that had been haunting her for weeks, ever since she discovered that Commander Kyle, the human warrior, was her bonded mate. The knowledge should have brought her comfort. Instead, it brought danger. Kyle was no longer simply a guest of Virelia. The moment the Council learned of their bond, he became a threat, both to the balance of power and to those who feared the old prophecy. It spoke of a union between a warrior from the Death Worlds and a royal of Virelia, a union that would either save the kingdom or destroy it. Serenia had no doubt the Council believed the latter. Kyle had been moved from the royal guest chambers to the fortified section of the palace, a polite way of saying he was under guard. He could still train in the courtyard and speak with Serenia during the day, but never without watchers nearby. He stood in the training ring now, his breath steaming, in the cool morning air as he swung his blade in a series of precise arcs. The steel hummed as it cut through the air, every movement controlled but carrying the power of a predator. Serenia approached, her guards following at a distance. She stopped at the edge of the ring, folding her hands to hide the worry in them. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said softly. Kale looked at her, sweat streaking his temple. "Hard enough is the only way I know," he replied. "And I can feel it, Princess. Something's coming." She lowered her voice. "The Council is calling an emergency session tonight. I'm not invited." Kyle's jaw tightened. "That means they're planning something they don't want you to stop." That evening, the great chamber was lit by golden lamps, but the warmth of the light did nothing to soften the hard faces of the gathered council members. Serenia had managed to slip inside the shadows of the gallery above, unseen. Below, Chancellor. Rin's voice echoed. "The human is dangerous. He has already gained the princess's trust. If the bond is real, we risk the prophecy's darker path." Another voice rose, deep and commanding. "The Empire of Drakthar moves closer each day. We cannot risk divided loyalty within our palace walls. The human must be removed." Serenia's heart pounded in her chest. They were speaking of Kyle, as though he were an enemy agent, not the warrior who had saved her life twice already. But then an older counselor leaned forward, his voice sharp. "If the bond cannot be broken, then we must control it. Send the human to the front lines against Drakthar. If he survives, he earns his place. If not, the problem solves itself." Murmurs of agreement followed. Serenia knew then that they had already decided. Later that night, she found Kale in the training courtyard, his sword sheathed, his eyes on the moonlit sky. "They're sending you to the front," she said without preamble. Kale didn't look surprised. "I expected as much. They mean it as a death sentence." He glanced at her, the faintest smile tugging his mouth. "Then they don't know me very well." Serenia stepped closer, her voice fierce. "This isn't a game, Kyle. The Drakthar are not like the raiders you've fought before. They are merciless. And if you fall..." Her voice caught. "The bond will break. I will feel it. It will kill me." Kale's expression softened, but there was steel beneath it. "Then I'll make sure I don't fall." The next day, preparations began. Kale was given a Virelian warhorse, armor forged of silver steel, and a sword tempered in the heat of the high mountains. Still, Serenia could see the way the soldiers around him eyed him with suspicion. To them, he was an outsider, untested in their wars. Before his departure, Serenia met him in the stables. She carried a small, polished stone that glowed faintly, from within. "This is a binding talisman," she explained. "It will let me sense where you are, even if you are far from Virelia. If you are in danger, I will know." Kyle accepted it, closing his large hand around hers for a moment longer, then was proper. "You'd come for me?" She met his gaze without hesitation. "Always." The war camp lay in the foothills east of Viralia, close to the border. When Kale arrived, the commanders wasted no time sending him into patrol duty, testing him in skirmishes against Drakthar raiding parties. To their surprise, Kyle not only survived, he excelled. His human endurance, honed on a harsh homeworld, allowed him to fight for hours without tiring. His unconventional tactics confused the enemy, forcing them to retreat from ground they had held for months. Rumors spread quickly through the camp. Some soldiers began to respect him. Others feared him even more. Back in the capital, Serenya's nights grew restless. The talisman would warm at times, letting her know Kyle was in battle. She would wake from dreams of smoke and blood, her heart pounding. Then, one night, the talisman flared so hot she nearly dropped it. She knew instantly that Kale was in mortal danger. She ran to the War Council chambers, demanding news. The generals refused to tell her anything. But she overheard a messenger whisper that Kale's patrol had been ambushed deep in enemy territory. Without waiting for permission, Serenya made her decision. The following dawn, a cloaked rider left the palace gates, heading east toward the war front. Her identity was hidden, her guards handpicked from the few who still believed in the prophecy's promise rather than its threat. She carried not just her sword, but the resolve to bring Kale back alive. For in her heart, Serenya knew the truth. The bond between them was more than prophecy. It was destiny, and she would fight the whole galaxy to protect it. The dawn was cold and gray when Princess Serenya's small group reached the edge of the war front. The air smelled of ash and smoke. Craters scarred the ground. Far ahead, the distant echoes of gunfire rolled like thunder. Serenya rode at the head, her cloak wrapped tight against the chill. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with determination. Kale was out there somewhere, fighting for his life. And she would not let him face death alone. The ambush site. After hours of tracking, the scouts found the remains of Kale's last patrol. The ground was littered with broken weapons, splintered armor, and signs of struggle. Blood stained the soil. In dark patches, Serenya dismounted and knelt, her fingers brushing the cold earth. "He fought hard," she whispered. Her lieutenant nodded grimly. "Some survivors taken prisoner. Enemy forces moved in fast. We need to find them, now." Serenya nodded, rallying her group. "Then we ride fast and fight harder, into the enemy's lair." The group followed a narrow path leading into a network of caves hidden by rocky cliffs. The caves were deep and winding, twisting like the roots of an ancient tree. They moved cautiously, weapons ready. Serenya's talisman pulsed, faintly against her chest, a quiet heartbeat guiding her toward Kale. Suddenly, voices echoed from deeper within. The enemy was close. Serenya signaled a halt. She and a small team crept forward. The rescue inside a wide cavern, they found Kyle and several prisoners chained to the wall. Kyle looked battered, bruised, and tired, but his eyes burned with defiance. "Serenya," he said quietly when he saw her. "You came?" She stepped forward, her voice steady. "I will never leave you." The guards noticed them and raised alarms. A fierce battle erupted. Blasts of energy and clashing steel filling the cavern. Serenya fought beside Kale, their moves perfectly in sync. Where she struck, he covered. Where he blocked, she advanced. The bond between them was stronger than ever, guiding their every action. The escape. They fought their way back through the tunnels, enemies in pursuit. Kyle's strength surprised even the veterans, and Serenya's leadership kept the group moving with purpose. Outside, their horses waited. They mounted quickly and galloped toward safety as the enemy's shouts faded behind them. United front back at the war camp, Kale was hailed as a hero. His survival and the rescue mission shattered the doubts of many soldiers. Even the council began to reconsider their stance. Serenya addressed the commanders. The bond between Kale and me is not a weakness. It is a strength. Together we represent a new future, one where humans and Virelians stand united. The final battle weeks later, the armies of Virelia and their human allies launched a decisive assault against the Drakthar forces. Kale and Serenia fought side by side, their bond making them faster, stronger, and smarter than any enemy could expect. Their enemies faltered before their unity, and the battlefield echoed with the roar of victory. The new dawn, with the Drakthar defeated, peace talks began. The humans and Virelians agreed to new alliances, inspired by the bond between their champions. End. A quiet moment after the celebrations, Serenia and Kale stood together beneath the stars. "I never believed in fate," Kale said. "But this bond, it feels like something more." Serenia smiled. "It is more. It's our choice, our strength, and it will guide us forward." He took her hand. "Together, together," she agreed.